down in the future? Or no answer? One of the things I'm always tempted to do is to figure out how many of these got taken and then subtract the number of iClicker clicks, and then I can figure out how many people are not coming to class and having a friend pick up a handout. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And by the way, I don't want to discourage you from doing that. If you can't make it to class, definitely have someone pick up a handout for you. C is the predominant answer, but there are plenty of people who think B and D. Does anybody, and A, and there's, so it's a lovely bell-shaped distribution. Anybody want to explain any of these answers? Who feels relatively confident of their answer and would like to explain it? One of these days I'm going to call on someone who answered E. Yes? You answered B. Okay, and your name is Priyanka. Okay. So you're thinking that they're time inconsistent, meaning, sorry, and I think I lost a little bit of track of what you were saying. So why work now? Because I'll have the opportunity to work more in the future? But that sort of says, okay, so on a high-wage day, which would be a rainy day, I'm going to work less because I anticipate that there will be future rainy days when I can work more, and I tell myself, yeah, I'll work harder in the future on another rainy day. I just happen to not want to work hard right now. Right. Okay, so this is annoying because that actually is a very good answer, and it's not the one I'm looking for at all. It has to do with the next topic in the class that we're going to start talking about. That's interesting. I don't know if anybody actually has addressed that in this. I think that what is true is that if we puzzled over that for a few minutes, which I'm not going to be cognitively able to do right now, we discovered that there's a reason that doesn't work. It's not the phenomenon that we're addressing right now. So let's think that through. Maybe you send me an email, we'll puzzle it out together, and then we'll come and we'll do a presentation on it. Yeah?
I said C because I think that they work, and I'm graphing this wrong, but I think that their work depends on what their average wage is.
Okay.
And that when they make a higher wage, work until they hit what their reference point is.
Okay.
So, well, I can take the rest of the day off because I hit what I'm used to.
Okay, and so remind me your name one time? Jack. So Jack is saying these people are reference dependent. Reasonably good guess given the topic. And that they're basically shooting for their average wage, and on a high wage they get there sooner. And so you said that must mean that it must be the case that they don't take their future earning potential into account, because if they did, they would say, wait a minute, that's a dumb idea. If I'm loss averse with respect to some reference, why would it be a daily reference point? I should be thinking about my future ability to get to my monthly reference point more easily, right? So in some sense what Jack is saying is that it's got to be the case that they're just, there's no way that these people could be correctly taking into consideration their ability to work hard in the future, to work less in the future on low wage days. They must be thinking narrowly about today. Yeah? Yeah. The leisure they can get today is a certain good. So now you're introducing uncertainty. They're afraid that in the future, like, they might have some situation where, they have a kid home sick, so they really don't want leisure time. Like, God, my kid's home sick, and my wife is taking care of him, and I'm going to stay in the taxi all night. Something like that. Okay, so you guys are probably a lot smarter than any of the other people publishing behavioral economics, because we now have 2 or 3 believable stories that I haven't seen in the literature. So this is a serious suggestion to all of you, and some of you have taken me up on this. When something like that comes up, go home and think hard about it, because you may have come up with an explanation. It's not the case that people who publish articles in peer-refereed academic journals are on balance smarter than the smartest of you. They are the smartest of you. Okay, and in fact, many of them are well below. Many of them are fairly mediocre. Ask me how I know. So bottom line, what you're going to find is that unless we have some really extreme story about people completely discounting the future, pretending that they'll just work harder on a future day, we're going to find that unless we include in our model some assumption that people are basically just sort of making their labor decisions narrowly one day at a time, we won't get this effect. We won't get this effect, and the paper addresses that very extensively. Okay, so here's how these guys explain this. Right, so we have these two findings. A is that there's a negative elasticity of supply for inexperienced drivers, and B is that that effect goes away for experienced drivers. So here's how they explain it. Reference-dependent model with loss aversion and narrow framing. Aha, that comes back in. Can explain that first result, the negative elasticity of supply. Because of narrow framing, drivers maximize daily utility rather than monthly or yearly utility. And then exactly as Jack says, drivers have some kind of daily income target, which is their reference point. Unfortunately, Cameron et al. Don't say anything about where that income target comes from. Jack gave a suggestion, which is that it's their average, which is believable. And then when their income, at the beginning of the day, they're in the domain of losses relative to that reference point. So they drive and they drive and they drive, and gradually they're making up losses, right? They're getting towards their reference point from the negative side of things. And their marginal utility for every dollar they earn is high, right? Because they're trying to get up to that reference point, and then as soon as they get to the target, everything above that is a gain. So they stop working and go home because their marginal utility of money has just sharply gone down, right? So the wage they earn is suddenly not worth as much to them because they've gone above their reference point. That's the story. Now, if the wage went super high, presumably they'd come back again, right? They'd say, oh, whoops, wait, what? The Yankees are winning? Okay, fine, I'll go back out. So that's the story. Now, there's actually quite a lot of literature back and forth on this. There are a number of labor economists who've gone out to poke holes in this and say, no, actually, your results are wrong, that's not what's going on. And then other people have come back around and said, no, Cameron et al. Are right. I think I'm right in saying that if you go around and ask taxi drivers, I think in the original paper they surveyed not taxi drivers, but the fleet managers that lease the cars out to the taxi drivers, and basically what they all said, almost all of them said exactly what Jack just said. Oh, these guys are just trying to reach a certain target and then they go home. So, if your model matches the data and also what everybody says they do, it doesn't guarantee that it's right, but it suggests that it's right. Okay. So this behavior definitely looks like a mistake. Now, this is a really interesting thing that they did, which is a really valuable thing to do when you're doing this kind of research. So again, we have this idea that what people ought to have been doing normatively is to try to maximize their total consumption of both money and leisure time. If those drivers who were engaged in income targeting, the subset that had this negative elasticity of supply, had driven simply the same number of hours every day, just a fixed hourly workday, their income would have gone up on average by 8%. Okay? Now, if you're out there looking for a way to get an 8% raise, this is pretty low-hanging fruit, okay? Because you don't need to ask anybody's permission. and you don't have to get anybody's approval. If they had behaved as if their labor supply elasticity was 1, a not unreasonable number, their income would have gone up by 15.6% on average. So if they'd just been willing to behave in the way that the standard model says they should have behaved, they would have been a lot better off. And they would have had more leisure time as well, right? So these people could have increased their bundle over time of both money and leisure time. If that's not better, right? If voluntarily choosing to make over the course of any week or month both less money and less leisure time isn't irrational, then I'm not quite sure what is, right? You're supposed to prefer more of nice things to less of nice things. Again, if your non-market time is spent lying on a bed of nails with somebody standing on your chest, then maybe you want less leisure time. But by and large, this seems to be a manifestly irrational thing to do. Not just irrational. Sorry, I want to go further and say that it's not just irrational. It's actually a mistake. Okay? These people, if you sat them down and explained what was going on and sort of explained, look, here's what you want to be doing. Given who you are as an actual real person, you want more money, you want more free time. Here's how you can get it. Right? When I say it's a mistake, I'm postulating that if you sat people down and explained that to them, they would at least say, even if they didn't change their behavior, they would at least say, oh yeah, you're right, that is kind of a dumb thing to do. That is kind of a dumb thing to do. That is a mistake.
So does it show on crappy earning days that they work extra long hours each day?
Yep. Same thing. I don't know whether it's more that they work less on high-wage days or that they work more on low-wage days. My guess is probably, if you knew what they're, like, that they probably are influenced more by high-wage days than low-wage days. That's just my guess, right? Because at a certain point you just get tired and go home. But the idea is that it works both ways. That on a low-wage day you say, oh my God, I got to throw in a couple extra hours around and I'll go home short of my target. Yeah. What is the time frame for leisure time? Well, we don't know. That's kind of this time frame is the crucial issue. What is their time frame for leisure time? Maybe it's true that they really, really care each day, right? Like, yeah, I know I'm going to have time tomorrow, and that's going to make me happy tomorrow, but I'm not willing to put off my leisure time today. You'd have to believe that their willingness to, this is a question of what's called intertemporal substitution. You'd have to believe that their willingness to substitute leisure time today for leisure time tomorrow is incredibly low, right? That I really, really, no, really, if you take away an hour of my leisure time today and give me back an hour and a half tomorrow, it's just not going to make me happier. I care that much about every minute of my leisure time each day, and I'm not willing to sort of substitute from one day to the next. It's not super plausible. Oh, procrastinate's a different issue. That comes back to what Priyanka was saying. There's a lot of different things that could be going on in here. Okay, but by and large, what is true is that if you write down a model in which people are taking into consideration more than one day at a time, you're going to get pretty much automatically you're going to get that they work more on high-wage days. Okay, so. And then result B, the one about the experienced drivers, seems to suggest that with experienced drivers stop making this mistake. Why? Does experience drive out loss aversion, or do they just stop narrow framing? Or another possible explanation is, if you're the kind of person who has this narrow framing and loss aversion, you wind up just hating taxi driving because you don't make very much money and you leave the business. And only the people who have the necessary psychological framework to go out there and make a lot of money for not much time are the ones who wind up staying in the business. Don't know which of those things it is. Very interesting, outstanding questions about the relationship between experience and irrationality. So lots of low-hanging fruit there, potentially, for research questions. Okay. And then this is just kind of tongue-in-cheek. Why does experience make a difference for cab drivers but not for financial drivers? And I just jokingly say most cabbies could tell you the answer, right? Because they have financial traders in the back of their car all day long, and they listen to them saying completely ridiculous things on the cell phone, and they know that, in fact, financial traders are not actually necessarily the sharpest tools in the shed. All of which is just part of my grand strategy to try to get as many of you as possible to do something other than finance. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the extensive margin of labor supply, which is whether or not you work in the first place, right? And this is basically the question of whether or not the available wage is above or below what's called your reservation wage. And we're just going to talk about this briefly. This is actually one of my favorite things, so this is about happiness research. Okay, yeah. We don't know. This is an unanswered question. This strand of the literature doesn't answer that question. We don't know why the phenomenon doesn't show up for experienced drivers. Right? What would be interesting? So you can imagine a hypothetical experiment, which is going to take a bunch of new taxi drivers, and I'm going to force them to stay in the business exogenously for some period of time, and then observe what happens. But unfortunately, we're not able to do that hypothetical experience in this economy. Right? So if you went to where are people still North Korea, right, where you're still allowed to basically just enslave people, then you could try this experiment. But you'd probably be forcing them to work fixed hours in their taxi cab as well. Okay, so here's a whole different deal. These guys, Newmark and Postal Weight, explore the labor supply decisions of married women. Now, labor economists focus on married women quite a lot because at least so we still have the sort of traditional family in the United States, at least, and a lot of other countries, is one in which the man is so first of all, it's the one in which there's a man and a woman, and the man earns most of the money, and the woman either stays at home and engages in what's called home production, right, like raising children, keeping the house clean, paying the bills, etc., or she goes out and earns additional money in the labor market. So married women, typically, even today, because that traditional household arrangement is not as common, but it's still there to a large extent in a lot of households. So what you have is that this is a population whose labor supply decisions are fairly flexible in the same way that cab drivers' daily labor supply decisions are quite flexible. They have a certain amount of control over whether they work or not, and you see women making these kinds of decisions much more flexibly than men do. Right? So most what are called prime age working men their elasticity of labor supply is virtually zero. Most of us just go and we work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and then we go home and that's it. And the wage rate doesn't seem to affect that very much. It affects how soon people retire, but it doesn't seem to affect what most married prime age men do in the prime of their life. Right? Married women is where we see some movement along this. So these guys went and they used the data set called the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth, which is this thing that tracks people from youth into adulthood. It's been going on long enough that there's now quite a lot of data in this data set on people who have not been youth for quite a long time. So what they did a logit regression, which just means that you're regressing a yes-no variable. Are you working or are you not working on a series of different variables? They included in the regression the woman's own wage, plus a bunch of demographic characteristics and local unemployment rate, so features of the woman's utility function and budget constraint, as well as her husband's income, plus other sources of household income, right? So what determines your labor supply? Well, the wage, your preferences, and your other sources of income all go into the model. Then they added in whether or not the woman's sister-in-law works, right, my brother's wife, and whether or not her husband makes less than her sister's husband, okay? So we're going to look at the women that hover around the men in my family, and then we're going to look at the men that hover around the women in my family. Okay, and here's what what the standard labor supply model says. The standard labor supply model is entirely contained within A and B up here, right? So we typically think that labor is a function of the wage rate, which is the slope of that budget constraint, your non-labor income, which you can model as saying, well, you have a bunch of income before you start working, and then your constraint goes like that. Your preferences, right, which is, well, into this mix, you're going to throw in some indifference curve, which is represent people's preferences between leisure time and consumption goods, and then a bunch of demand-side factors such as the employment rate and other characteristics of the local economy. That's all in A and B. That's all the standard model, and all of those variables move in the direction that you would expect, right? Higher wages, more women go get jobs, etc. But the standard model should predict either no effect of what goes on with the sister-in-law and the sister's husband. I guess a sister's husband is a brother-in-law, right? Sister-in-law, brother-in-law. So the standard model says utility comes from leisure and consumption of goods. Well, what does your sister-in-law's work status and your sister's husband's work status have to do with either your leisure or your consumption goods? Well, at best, they should have no effect whatsoever. If you live in a sort of nice, generous, tightly knit family, maybe they give you some part, right? Maybe it means that they give you more expensive gifts on your birthday, in which case you might work a little bit less because of the income effect. But by and large, we should expect there to be no effect, right? At least a very small or negative effect. It's what? Now, see, you're on it. You're on it like a little blue bonnet. It's going to turn out to be about reference dependence. What's the story? Yeah, so if your brother goes out and marries somebody, you've never met her before, the one thing you know about her is that that she and her husband live better than you do. The hell with them. I have a brother. Both my brother and sister make more than me, and they're partners both. It's devastating to me. It keeps me up at night all the time. I'm going back to Kentucky and I'm going to see them, and I'm just going to be sitting there smoldering in rage. Damn you, boy! That better give me that raise. Yeah. So I mean, that's the base. That's the idea. The idea is that we compare ourselves to other people in our social world, and we base our decisions on where we stand relative to other people. This, based on your own experience, there's some truth to this. Yeah. You definitely think so? You would do the same thing? You can imagine. You have a friend who would do that, right?
No,
you would do the same thing. I do the same thing all the time. I can't stand feeling unfavorably compared to other people in any dimension whatsoever. This person has longer hair than me, shorter hair than me. I hate coming up short on any yardstick relative to anybody, which is, this is a great way to wind up spending a lot of time alone. Actually, the thing to do with that, too, is to just spend time with people who are radically different from you, right? So I have friends who are all 20 years older than you. Okay, so that's what we think is going on here. So here's what's going on in terms of the results. The likelihood of a woman working, the percent probability that she will work, goes up by 7 percentage points if her sister-in-law works, and by 16 to 25 percentage points if her husband makes less than her sister's husband. Okay, so this seems like a pretty big driver of women's labor force participation decisions. If you are engaged in public policy and you're trying to draw married women into the labor market by, say, for example, jacking up the earned income tax credit, another possibility would be just to go and mess with their social reference point and draw attention to all of the wealthy people just around them and get them to feel really jealous, which I think may be exactly what's going on in this country. Then they do this thing. Again, you always want to sort of take your results and your model and do some work with it that explains something interesting. They take the model that they can come up with, and they turn out that, I don't know if you know this, but starting after World War II, in this country, women's labor force participation rates just shot up over the space of a couple decades, massively, by scores of percentage points. The standard model, where that's driven only by wages and income effects and so forth, just has a really hard time capturing the speed at which that happens. But if you sort of include the fact that everybody else's reference point is going up at the same time, it's like they're all trying to chase a rabbit that's running out in front of them, and so they enter the labor force much faster. Now, sociologists might tell you that there's all kinds of other reasons, but it's always worthwhile taking your model and doing something interesting with it like that and saying, hey, I feel like I've made progress in explaining something that matters. All right, next clicker question. And this will I'll give you a hint. This is going to give us the transition into talking about reference point determination. Okay, given what we just learned about the labor supply choices of married women, what would you predict regarding the labor supply of unmarried women? All right, so we're going from the data we have to some other data that we don't have. Okay, A, it will go up when their sister-in-law starts working, when their sister's husband gets a raise, same as with married women. B, it will depend only on their own consumption preferences and exogenous parameters such as the wage, other income sources, and demand-side factors. C, it will go up when their next-door neighbor buys a new car. D, it will go down if the proportion of people in the metropolitan area with higher educational attainment than them goes up. What's your guess? Okay, say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Okay, that's interesting. So you have a bunch of people who think it's going to be just the same as for married women. A bunch who think it's basically not going to be reference dependent, right? That it's just like unmarried women, they're smarter than that. Obviously, they're smarter than married women because they didn't get married, which is a very straightforward decision for any woman with her head screwed on straight. And then a bunch of people think, no, actually, all that's wrong. It really is driven by whether or not your next door neighbor buys a new car. I'd love to have a long conversation about this because it's a very compelling. I find it a very compelling question. But unfortunately, I need to move on. Let me just tell you that you are probably the only answer that I personally would not stake any money on is B. I don't think anybody's decisions